Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Quorum Podcast. This is where academic medicine meets remote, austere, and resource-limited areas. Today we are with Rhod Jordan. Rhod is on our faculty and has been for quite a while. He is currently in Kurdistan working as a remote paramedic on an oils site. Rhod, welcome to the program.
Cheers, Aebhric. Thanks for asking me along.
Tell us a bit about yourself and your background and what you're doing now.
Right, I guess in a nutshell. So I'm a UK paramedic by training. Been in the game for best part of 3 decades now. Hence the poor coping mechanisms and cynical sense of humour. Left street medicine way back in 2004. Since when I've been plying my trade around the world in various guises and for lots of different kind of organisations.
So what is your background? Are you a nurse, you're a paramedic, you're ODP, you're CMT?
I'm a UK paramedic. That's my core training, if you like. And then over time, over the years, I've added to that skill set and expanded upon that. Whether that's been undertaking the offshore medic course, minor surgery courses, trop med courses, travel, expedition, whatever's added into the bag really to suit the environments that I'm going to be heading into.
And that's where we met. We were teaching together at XMed in the Pengethley Manor outside of Hereford 12 years ago.
Yeah, goodness me, yeah, it's got to be back in sort of 2011, 2012, I think, mate.
Yeah?
Yeah.
So yeah, back then when XMed was running things in Hereford, and then they bought the Pengethley Manor from Dr. Hagman and DMI, and I was working for DMI at the time, and then kind of just stayed on and did some stuff with XMed, and you were working there full time, was it?
Yeah, I was full time with them. So I started with them within the training department. Then I moved across more onto the operations side, because one of the beauties of XMed at the time was all members of the training team got to deploy overseas to keep their skills current, up to date, credibility in front of a classroom. So it was great. So we were bouncing around the globe doing media trips, NGO working for the UN, all sorts of bits and pieces. But yeah, as I say, it really gave that training team credibility in what they were delivering. It was current, up to date. Yeah, it was good.
So what was some of your most remote, austere, or wacky deployments you've done teaching for them?
Oh, teaching and operational medicine, I would say. So a very, very small desert island, 14 miles off the coast of Belize. That was an interesting one. You could see one side of the island to the other from my hammock. So yeah, that was very much that was a different one. The Western Highlands of Guatemala with an NGO party putting up fog nets, filming in the jungles of Guyana, several parts of Africa and the Middle East and Asia. Yeah, it was really varied. It was an amazing experience and a great few years with them.
Nice. And you've continued to teach. So where are you teaching currently?
I teach all over, but I'm quite picky who I represent and teach for. So the college is right up there, and there's 2 other training providers that I also. I'm on their faculty as well. But what I'm really passionate about is when I'm away on operational deployments is actually leaving some kind of worthwhile legacy. Because obviously, we drop in particularly as expatriate medics. We can be on the ground for days, weeks, months, sometimes years, obviously. But eventually we leave and go home. So it's kind of like, well, are we going to leave any kind of positive impact? And I think medical training and health education is one of the things that we can leave behind us. And it's that kind of from small acorns. You just don't know if you plant that seed, you grow that passion, that that person that you're working with, who's your driver on this deployment, well, maybe one day he's the next ambulance paramedic, or that region or nation's first paramedic, you know. And as you can tell from my voice, I get really quite excited and enthused by that.
It is quite amazing, isn't it? I could count on more than one hand somebody coming in saying, "Oh man, I have to do this wilderness first aid training for my job. Medicine is just give me the cert and get me out." And then by the end of the day, they're like, "This is awesome. I'm going to do the REMS, and then I'm going to do the paramedic, and just cultivating their passion. And I see that in you, which is why I invited you onto the college, ages ago, years and years and years ago. And you have that passion for teaching. Where does that come from for you?
I mean, it stems right back to my roots. I can blame my parents, as we all do, for all our wrong turns in life. They were both teachers and then university lecturers, so
nice.
Very, very much that's kind of like part and parcel of the family. And then in my teenage years, I was waiting to go into the military, and I ended up spending a couple of years working in outdoor adventure centres. So I've been teaching in one guise or another since I was maybe 16 years old.
Wow.
So yeah, it's always been there. It's always been there. I just love seeing that light go on in somebody's eye.
Indeed.
And as you just put it, that give me more. Yeah.
So were you teaching wilderness like in Plazy Brennan and other things from 16? Was it always austere environments?
It always has been. Always has been. I love being outdoors, regardless of environment. Apart from maybe the very top of the planet and the very bottom of the planet, I'm not built for that. I went to the Arctic once, didn't like it.
Wow.
I'm too skinny. It's too cold. I don't have the lagging.
So you're stuck on 6 continents. We haven't done that 7th one yet.
I haven't done that 7th one yet, mate. It would have to be a flying visit for me with a lot of down clothing.
Nice. So from the window, you could drop your flag and let it stick in the snow. So you teach austere, and that is your passion. What are some barriers you've had when trying to teach austere medicine and delivering these programs in remote and austere environments?
I think some of the biggest hurdles, particularly if you're with commercial companies, is everybody else has got a day job. Yeah. Particularly if it's extractive industry, everything is dollar driven, as you know. So to try and release people for what some might see as nicey training over and above, I don't know, H2S awareness, they might prioritize over and above medical skills. So that's definitely one of the big barriers. And you do get that, well, I'm employing you as the medic, so that's, anything medical or health related, that's you. And you do have to kind of point out, well, excuse me, but, generally there's only one of me. And on a purely selfish level, what happens if I'm the person that gets ill or injured?
So having to create that medical team, build that medical team through training to assist you.
Yeah, completely. And, it's going to make your life easier, because when the proverbial hits the fan, if you are that lone set of hands, you'll know from your own experience, if you can just say to somebody, if you can pass me X, Y, or Z out of pouch 3, and they know what X, Y, or Z is, what it looks like, and where pouch 3 is, you and your patient are already onto a winner.
And having that, that's a difficult, isn't it? Because as you say, you're working for an organization. They mightn't care too much about medicine. They say, well, we hired you lot to be the medic. We're not going to give you time to train up additional people. How do you get past that barrier of saying, look, no, we need 8 hours so I can train this six people to be at least first aiders and who can assist me on a trauma or a medical scenario?
No, that's a really good question, Aebhric. There's a couple of different ways I've found, a couple of different strategies over the years. By far the best one is if you can find that champion within the management team, somebody who's actually got some kind of clout. If you can identify that person, get them on side, that makes huge inroads. And if you've got that level of support, you can really move things forward. A second tack to take is to actually initially bypass the management structure, if you like. I'm not talking about declaring independence or any kind of revolution, I promise you. But engage with the workforce. So over time, develop your social relationships, because that's a huge part of what being a medic is. You're that friendly, neutral, listening ear. Identify those people within the workforce that are actually keen to learn. And then rather than doing it as formal sessions during the working day, carve out a bit of time during rest breaks, during your on-call evening time when you're not physically in the clinic. Yeah. So, and a really good way of doing that to sell it to people is showing them that some form of first aid medical knowledge is a good life skill, and that they're actually far more likely to use it at home with their families and their friends than they are in the workplace. So if you're, say, on a site where I currently am, where it is a relatively young, fit, predominantly all-male environment, so if we were doing BLS training with the folks, it would be adult only. Well, I always make sure that I've got a child's mannequin along, because, everybody loves their kid. Well, most of us love our kids anyway. So teach them child CPR as well. Teach them how to clear, a child that's choking, how to clear that airway with the basic techniques. And again, that really engages people because they see the value in that. So rather than all tourniquets and wound packing and all the sexy stuff, teach them some real good day-to-day stuff that how to treat a scald. Get them on board, get them enthused, and then that's when you get that lights on, give me more, I want to learn more. And they become your champions, and they can pressurize the management into making more formal training sessions available.
That's clever, isn't it? Because so they come to you and they're like, oh, this is just going to be about the job, but you teach medical training and say, you know what, we don't have any pediatric people on this job site, but you're going to be home, aren't you? Yeah. So get them engaged on, oh, whoa, this is good for me and the job, sure, whatever. But this is good for my life as a dad or as a mom, or to be better at home or as a member of the community. People are like, oh, wait, John's one of these first aiders, go grab him. So it's a good way of engaging them, isn't it? It's clever.
Thank you. Some people call it sneaky, but I prefer the word clever.
Yeah, we'll go with clever. But that's how you get around the problem of command and money. So as contractors, it's all about money. What are we hiring you to do? Why are you teaching pediatric first aid to these yokes? But you've got to get around that and talk to the people who are going to benefit from that training.
For sure, mate. And if you're delivering that in their rest breaks, in their downtime, and ostensibly in your downtime as well, then in the first stages, management can't say no to that. Because it's the alternative is the guys are in the rec room playing on PlayStation, watching television, whatever it may be. So for me, that's a far better use of their time. It's a far better use of my time. I've never been very good on rotation, sitting there and watching endless movies off a hard drive. So yeah.
I imagine you're just going to have that one person that's not going to be willing to leave the PlayStation to learn this, but maybe the peer pressure would bring them on board to learn this.
Yeah, and I think the other thing is you pick those battles that you're going to win, and you don't beat your head against a brick wall that ain't going to fall down. So expend your time, your energy, and your enthusiasm on those that are receptive to it.
So speaking of barriers to teaching, and we've all seen that problem problem student. uh, so back at home in the UK, when you're teaching, how do you engage that one problem student who's being a barrier, being a difficulty for other students? What's your technique in overcoming that?
I think there's a few, really, isn't there? I think a lot of it is going to be determined by are they attending the course because they want to attend the course? Unfortunately, most of the courses I teach on, people are there in their own time and paying their own coin. And then you've got those people that have been sent by their company. It's mandatory training. So what are you going to do? You've got to try and engage them. They're obviously there for a matter of hours, sometimes a couple of days. What to try and do, what is the barrier? Is it, I absolutely don't want to be here? Have they had a brush with a not very good training provider in the past? Have they had a life experience where they've been faced with an emergency situation and perhaps they didn't react in the way that they're now comfortable with, reflecting back? And that's always a good one, because if you can get into the psychology of that, if you can get into their psyche and draw that out, that's a really good way of engaging them. What happened? What went on? What would you have liked to have happened? Well, perhaps if we do this particular session, next time you're faced with something similar, you will now have the skills, knowledge, and confidence to deal with it. I mean, we know from our own experiences teaching over the years at whatever level, people are very hesitant to commence CPR. So what are the barriers to that? Well, we know one of the barriers over time has been the whole mouth-to-mouth side of life. So I just tell them now for our bystander CPR, well, don't do it, but do compression only CPR, but do really, really good compression only, and make sure you've got help inbound to you.
Bringing it back a step to your teaching students is one thing, and the barriers to that and the challenges of that is interesting. But taking a step back, now I'm teaching teachers, and I know you have done as well.
Yeah.
What strategies, suggestions, advice would you have for someone who has got 10, 15 years of experience? Now they're looking to become an instructor, or they've just hired on to be an instructor. What would you say to that person who is about ready to start the path that you and I have been taking?
Understand different learning styles. And if you understand the different learning styles that we all have, I'm a very visual learner, as an example. If you understand learning styles, then you can convert that to your teaching style. And you know that you need to mix that up, because we're all different, as I said. I kind of loathe PowerPoint these days. I've got to be honest. I might have it up and use it as a bit of a crib. I hate that, just standing there, clicking through slides, reading them verbatim. If that's somebody's idea of delivering training, then just send me your PowerPoint and I'll read it at my own time, thanks. But understand the different learning styles and then adapt your teaching to match that. You've got to cover that whole cross-section of learners in a room. So some people will be readers, some people will be writers, some people would like to take pictures of your slides or your overheads, show me age there, or your flip charts. Some people will not get the theory from a slide, they need to get hands-on with it. You've got to mix that whole bag together. And I think one of my biggest learning curves with that, thinking of a particular one, I was asked to teach an airport fire team in Somalia, quite a out there location. I call it an airport, but and it was an international airport because flights came in from Kenya, so therefore it was international. And the guys were uber enthusiastic, absolutely uber enthusiastic, fantastic. My Somali is non-existent, and their English language was non-existent. And we had the best 3 days training together that I can remember in a very, very long time. And it was purely because they were enthusiastic, they wanted to learn, and pre-hospital care and first aid is a contact sport, in my opinion. You can read all the books in the world. You can watch all the YouTube videos. But until you get hands-on with each other in a classroom, you can't be shy about touching another human if you want to be some kind of decent first aider, first responder, or medic. Yeah, and we did, and those guys were at a really, really good standard by the end of day 3. If I'd had an issue on that airstrip, I'd have been quite happy for any one of those guys to get hands on with me. Language barriers, irrespective of.
It's interesting to see that passion. I remember in the Army, in the Green Berets, we teach, and I forgot what country I was in, maybe Haiti, and we were teaching them, and it was up on the whiteboard, and I was talking and drawing out, and they're all nodding and yeah. And at the end of it, I started asking questions, and then somebody said, mate, dude, they can't read. So I spent the whole 40 minutes, up there like, oh, we're going to do this and that and the other. And they're like, oh man, this is going really well. Oh, they're all nodding and stuff. And, nothing. Okay, let's start from scratch. And let's move this to maybe more hands-on than more didactic. Yeah, that was the first time I realized that, you just can't, like the Army teaching is like, okay, this is what you're going to do.
Army method of instruction. I know what I'm doing.
Yeah.
Blah, 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 blah.
Yeah.
Knife hands.
And that knife hands. Yeah. That was, for me, that's a profound jump in my learning as a teacher, as an instructor, on having to read your audience and get to know them. And that's been a challenge as well. And I imagine you've seen that as well.
Yeah, I think you make a really good point there, Abe. And it's, we kind of gloss over that, that opening slide at the beginning of every course, and you go through the housekeeping and da-da-da-da. And there's a bullet point quite often right at the end of slide 1. And we gloss over it, and it's called Icebreaker. It doesn't have to be there, to play some silly game. Get to know your students. Introduce yourself. You don't have to give them chapter and verse. I've been here, done that. You should all listen to me. And here's another war story. But get the feel of your group, because they will have good, relevant experience, whether it be in medical care or from life itself, and it will give you that feel. Who's engaging? Who's the outspoken one? Who's the quiet one? It's really important to do that icebreaker in some form or another. And I think it was one of your LinkedIn pieces fairly recently where you said about teaching, and every class you come away from, you've learned something. And for me, that's phenomenal. That's one of the reasons I love delivering to and for clinicians. Because I can go and do a PHTLS, and I've got, I think on my last one, there was my last but one, sorry. It was like there was a consultant burns
wow.
doc in the room, and I'm like, "Oh, here's Rhod's little paramedic," and looking at the program, I'm down for the burns lecture. He smiles on me once again. So if I'm not coming away from a course and I haven't learned something as well, then I kind of haven't done my job either.
Yeah, that is a challenge, having someone in the audience that's they're better than you.
Yeah.
So it was in Paris last October at the Combat Med conference. I was speaking on prolonged field care, and there was a room full of 40 people, and I saw Stacy Shackelford in the room. She's like a goddess of honor. Just and I'm like, what? Why is she here? And then they're looking around and looking at all these. Like Tim Hodgetts, I think was there, Colonel.
Oh no,
was it Brigadier Hodgetts?
Yeah.
And I'm like, and at the end of it, I'm like, all right, guys, let's talk about who teaches prolonged field. Half the class raise their hand. I'm like, well, I teach. I'm like, okay, you know what? I don't have an ego. Let's talk about what do you use? Well, at the Special Forces Schoolhouse at Bragg, this is what we do. Brilliant. And so you start a conversation on what everyone is doing. And then, at the end of that, I was like, awesome. I just learned what the Italians are doing. I just learned what the SF guys are doing. And this, it was fantastic. But that was a bit of a shock.
Yeah, absolutely. But aren't those fireside chats so important and so informative.
Yeah.
You're saying, okay, that's not a formal teaching or learning session, but by heck, how much has everybody learned? Those 40 people from that knowledge share. I mean, it's just, absolutely phenomenal, and justifies conferences, in my opinion.
Yeah, I agree. You just can't get that from PowerPoints or even the virtual. WMS is doing a fantastic virtual conference. I'll give it to them, and they do have breakout sessions, and
they really nailed that over the pandemic. Yeah, I attended the very first one, and I was impressed. So yeah, big shout out to the Wilderness Medical Society. Well done.
Yeah, they and SOMA's been trying to do that. And they're catching up, but having the face to face in a conference where you're having that fireside chat at the end of each lecture is stunning, or just in between. You hear a great lecture and then you just follow them out discreetly, so they don't think you're weird.
You're not stalking.
You're not stalking. Yeah. You wait until they get a cup of tea. And
you'll be back on that register. You'll be back on that register again, Abe.
Yeah. But yeah, that's the learning, isn't it? And COVID has been really helpful for education because of that. Of now where there's virtual conferences, and now, well, the whole flipped classroom where we at the college are doing everything we can to have absolutely no PowerPoint lectures ever in the classroom. And COVID has been fantastic with that. And the online learning modalities. When we first became a degree granting college in 2019, I think it was 2019, there was no online policies for the EU and the Malta qualification framework. So we were issuing degrees with an online, with 80% online, and there was no policy because it was so foreign to what Malta has done before. But now, because of COVID, they have a beautiful algorithm on online, and this is a standard, and this is what you need to do, and it's better. It's made us better as a college. And so the COVID, I mean, it was devastating. 3 million people died so far. It's horrible, but silver lining is that we have education completely revamped, and I think with the new AI breakthrough that's happening as we speak, that could change yet again. So it's fantastic time to be in education.
It certainly is. It's very exciting. Very exciting.
So one last question I have for you, Rhod.
Yes, sir.
There are tons of instructor courses out there. What would you offer or suggest to someone who wants to get into teaching, or just starting to get into teaching, or is teaching now and they're looking at these wall of faces and they're freaking out? So what instructor development courses, or what PG cert in learning, or what would you suggest these people do to better themselves as an instructor?
The way that when I'm mentoring, particularly overseas, is I try and kick the boys and girls off with a level 3 in adult learning and teaching. So that'll give you your base without scaring you to death. So you can put your portfolio together. You can you gather your experience. Get yourself a really good mentor. That's key wherever you are in your career, I think, anyway. Get that experienced person that you've got the rapport with, that's going to be open and honest with you. That's super important to guide you in that direction. Start off with those subject areas that you are 100% supremely confident with. Yeah, don't set yourself up for failure. Right? Always remember, you ain't the smartest person in the room just because you got the fancy teacher title. Yeah? There's always going to be somebody in that room that knows more, potentially. Never stop learning. Never stop revising. Your CPD is supremely important. Keep up with the latest research, the latest evidence. Read, talk, network. Yeah. It's really, really important. never rest on your laurels, I guess.
Fantastic advice, and I really appreciate you taking the time to give us your pearls of wisdom, and I look forward to continuing to see you teach in our college.
I sincerely look forward to it, Aebhric, and thanks very much for having me on this afternoon.
This has been a presentation from the College of Remote and Offshore Medicine Foundation. If you would like to earn CPD credit for this podcast, you can join the Council of Members. Being a member of the college gives you free CPD credits, free access to the virtual field guide, and discounts on our e-learning courses. You can join the team on the college website, which is Corum, Corum, corum.org.